Hello, everybody. It's Dr. Bam. I've been getting some questions about the Unit 6 Knowledge Application Assignment, and I went over it in class and I realized this might be a place where a additional kind of little lecture video on how to do this assignment may be valuable. Even for those who have had the lecture, it helps to step through those, walk through those steps of how to complete this assignment. So for this assignment, you're exploring the TEKS. You're going to go to the link below, choose an age group. So when I say an age group, I mean a grade level or content level that you want to teach. Choose one to focus on for teaching, and you'll create a PowerPoint or a video with the following. So when you're doing this assignment, you are trying to show me that you understand how to break down a TEK in order for you to teach it. With that being said, I would choose a TEK that's on the simpler side, maybe in the K1-2 area, because they're going to be more direct TEKs, and it's about you showing me that you can break down a TEK and teach it, not a TEK and teach it, not necessarily that you know the content that is being taught. So let's follow the link to the TEKs. It's right here. First is you have to list the location of the TEK. And a lot of people don't do this and they lose points on it. So, so how do we look up a TEK location? So let's go to grade 1. And I always like to do mathematical because they're kind of direct. So you'll see the mathematic location for grade 1 is that right there. Don't worry about the little symbol, but you can just say 111.3 point. Okay. Then you give the next direction, which you'll never do little a because this is the introduction is not a knowledge and skills. It's just an introduction to the area, discussing things that'll be covered. Instead, you want to come down here to the knowledge and skills. So your next location number would be little b. And then you're going to choose your TEK. For the knowledge and skills for mathematics, they have a certain number of TEKs here, 1, 2. And we're going to go all the way down to the sub-TEK, but we're going to get pretty specific. So I am going to choose numbers and operations. Excuse me. It's pretty straightforward, so I'm going to put a 2 there for numbers and operations. So this is the main TEK, but what I want to do is the specific, so this is the knowledge. I want to have the specific skill. And so I'm going to go D. Okay, so then that's capital D. Now, some of them have even a sub to that TEK, and it'll be like I. And so you would put dot I or dot II, depending on what you're covering. Okay, so number 1 says to give the TEK's location. And so for this one is this. Okay, and then part 2 of number 1 says to copy the TEK word for word. So little b, number 2, D. And that is to generate a number that is greater than or less than a given whole number. Okay? I'm just copying it word for word. This is the one time that I'll let you plagiarize because you've basically cited it by giving the TEK number above. And so for number 1, the TEK is that, and what it is to generate a number that is greater than or lesser than the whole number. So that's all that number 1 is asking, is for you to go grab that TEK. Then you're going to list the specific skills one by one that need to be taught to fully teach this TEK. So looking at the verbs and the content. So they are going to generate a number. Okay, that is their job. That is greater than a given whole number. Be skill number 1. And then skill number 2 is greater than a given whole number up to 120. Skill number 2 is generate a number that is less than a given whole number up to 120. So it's important that I look that there's 2 skills under this. Even though there's one verb, they are asking content-wise that they do 2 things. One, generate a number greater than, and generate a number less than. So then your third part is going to be discuss and describe in a brief way that you could teach each of these skills. So I would say skill number 1, and I would probably list three ways that I could teach that skill. And then skill number 2, and list 3 ways that I could teach that skill. So why am I saying 3? There is a belief, and it's called the Cummings model, and there's a graph that goes with it, but it's not easy to draw out on here. And there is a belief that you should teach any given skill in 3 ways. The first way, or in 4 ways actually. The first way is teacher-led, which is your introduction to the skill. Okay, and so I would do an activity. Perhaps in this mind, the first activity that I would do would be have them sitting in a whole group, and we would look at a variety of numbers and look at the number line, and we would talk about numbers that are greater than the number that I gave. So maybe I chose 17. And so what numbers are greater than 17, and let them choose some things like that. The next one would be teacher-led, student-participated, student-supported. And this would be usually your small groups, where you're asking some questions. The student, you're still really leading the discussion and the question asking. This is usually some type of whole group activity. But you are still doing the major leading, prompting the answers, giving questions that make them think about how to solve it. And so that would be a second activity. Then the third way would be student-led. Sorry, I keep putting an A in there, and it's not. And teacher-supported. Okay, so student-led, teacher-supported, and this is probably going to be small group again, or pairs, and that's where they're working together to probably solve some questions that they're pretty much on their own doing the work, leading the discussion, demonstrating their knowledge, but they're not 100% on their own. They've got maybe 1 or 2 people working with them that's helping, going, yeah, that's right, and we're here. And the teacher's kind of walking around making sure, are they on the right track? Are they leaning, there to correct if needed, but really letting the students take the lead on it. So those would probably be the 3 ways that I would design an activity. So I would have an activity that fell into all of those things that supported that skill. So I think of a 100% teacher-led activity that would help students learn to generate a number that is greater than a given whole number, that presents that material. A second activity where the teacher is still leading and guiding, but the students are supporting it. And then the third activity would be students working together to make sure that they're solving the answers. The fourth step in this model of teaching is actually going to fall into question number 4, which is how you're going to assess the knowledge, which is the fourth way here. D under here is student-led teacher little or no intervention. Okay, and why? Because that teacher is trying to make sure, sorry, excuse my spelling as I type as we talk. The teacher is trying to make sure that the student actually knows the knowledge. So this is that assessment piece. So when I'm talking assessment, I don't want you telling me they're going to sit down and take a test. That's really boring, okay? And yes, you may test them at some point. It may be part of a larger test, but how, especially in these younger grades, are you going to really know that that child knows how to do that skill? It doesn't necessarily have to be a formal test quiz assessment. It could be, we're going to sit in small groups. They're going to answer one at a time. I'm going to, say, yes, they know it. They're solid. It could be a worksheet that they're completing in this case and to demonstrate, okay, there were 5 problems. They got 4 out of 5. That 5th one is obviously that they flipped or transposed a number. They got the skill. They have the understanding. They just struggled with that one because of another issue. So are you having them do it through a worksheet? Are you having them do it through one-on-one conversation? Are you having them do it through a test or a quiz? If it's, for example, science, they're going to demonstrate it. So they're going to do this quiz and here it's going to be the type of questions that are on the quiz. So don't just tell me you're going to do it on the quiz. What type of quiz are you going to do? Is it a multiple choice? Is it a short answer? Is it an essay? What type of questions are you going to ask? Give an example. Okay, so the question I might ask them is 17 greater than 29? And maybe you're going to write that out, and then they're going to answer these types of questions, yes or no, true or false, or they're going to be asked to produce a number that is greater than 29. So don't just say, I'm going to quiz them. How are you going to quiz them? What type of questions are you going to ask? You could make up a fake worksheet if you wanted to, or fake quiz document and say, as long as they score 4 out of 5 on this, I'm going to be happy that they've attained this skill. So what is going to be your judgment and how are you going to decide that? That's number 4. How are you going to assess the knowledge and know that your students have achieved that skill so that when the report card time comes around, you can say, this is how I know that they are a 1, which means they're not working towards that skill, a 2, which means they're progressing towards the skill, or a 3, which means they've mastered the skill. They've got it down. And so that is the breakdown of this assignment. So the big portion of it is to really, number 3, is to tell me in detail. So each activity, you should be pretty descriptive in 2 to 3 sentences of, this is what this activity is going to look like. So your options are to do a PowerPoint or a video. And for those in class, you also have the option, as we discussed, of presenting face-to-face. So what are the pluses and the minuses? So if you do a PowerPoint, I am basing 100% of my understanding of what you intend to do based on what you write. There's no reading into things there. If you do a PowerPoint with Screencast-O-Matic, where you're talking over it and you can link me to a YouTube video, then at least your words may fill in some of the gaps. The writing's not there. If you do the video, it's just the opposite. I'm only going off based on what you said. There's no writing. I will leave that piece up to you. Once again, your online students, you can do it via PowerPoint or video, and the video could be a YouTube link using something like Screencast-O-Matic, which is what this is, or it can be a Marco Polo. Just let me know that you Marco Polo'd, please. Or it can just be a straight PowerPoint with slides written. And then for those of you that are face-to-face, you also have the option to choose to present it in class, at which point I can ask you to clarify pieces of it along the way. Let me know if you have any questions, and I hope this helps.